And I'd be happy to yield.
I think all of us in this body know that the good senator represents a state, New Jersey in this case, which had suffered extraordinary loss at the time of 9/11. And a number of those extraordinary firefighters lived in the senator's state. And so when he speaks about these issues, talking about the courage and the bravery of these firefighters, he talks about with a good deal of background and understanding and certain enormous sense of compassion for having gone through with many of these families their loss. And that is why I believe the Senator's strong support for this legislation. As a former mayor and also someone that knows and has personal experience with these firefighters, can speak so authoritatively about what this legislation can really mean in terms of the safety and security of the community, and also with regard to the safety and security of the firefighters, police officers, first responders. Does the Senator agree with me that those that and their brothers and sisters that perhaps were not lost on that day, but in a very real sense, brothers and sisters of those first responders that were lost on the 9/11, many of whom lived in his district, do they feel that this legislation will help and assist the providing safety and security to the people, whether it's in New Jersey or in the communities they represent, and that they are supporting this legislation because they are very hopeful and prayerful that we'll never again face that kind of tragedy that we face, but that they believe that this legislation can help provide additional safety and security for their communities and for their fellow citizens.
I appreciate the Senator from Massachusetts' question and the chairman of the committee, and the answer is yes. Senator Kennedy, the fact is that New Jerseyans have this right. And yet every year when I have had visits from firefighters and police officers, they have talked about this legislation because they understand, even though they already have the right, they never want to visit another state for the loss of one of their fellows in the service. Who will have committed the ultimate sacrifice. They understand very powerfully that this ability to negotiate, as I suggested earlier, isn't just about salaries. Look, you don't do this type of work for a salary. You don't do this type of work for a pension. You don't do this type of work for certain benefits. You do this type of work because you are committed to the proposition that you are willing to sacrifice your life in return for saving someone else's. And that is incredibly important. And finally, the reality is, I found it interesting in those negotiations that I used to have as a mayor, when we were negotiating very often, as I said before, about the ability to perform the job, because it was with the mission in mind and the oath that was taken to save lives, that more often was on the table than the question simply about salaries or pensions or benefits. They know that their interaction with their governmental bodies in performing and having a service that far beyond that which may exist in those states that do not permit that interaction through the collective bargaining system, that in fact lives can be saved. Lives of their fellow firefighters, lives of their fellow police officers, and most importantly, lives of their fellow citizens. And that's why they have come and advocated for this legislation, even though they already enjoy the benefit. They understand the potential benefits for a much broader universe.
I just asked, so I see other senators that want to address the Senate. We've been reminded about how long we've been considering this legislation and how important it is that we do it at the present time. As the Senator knows, this bill was initially introduced by our former colleague, Senator DeWine, Mike DeWine, in 1999, and the Senate even voted on it in 2002, and we had a Health Committee meeting on the hearing on this same legislation in the 106th Congress in 2001. So many of these brave responders have waited for a long time. This has gone on for some 8 years without having a completion, and it's a matter that's been before this body as well in the during this Congress. So would the senator not agree with me finally that the time is now to take action? This is the time. We're talking about homeland security. We're talking about first responders, talking about those firefighters and police officers. Now is the time to permit them to be fully engaged, involved in further advancing the safety and security of our colleagues. Would the senator not agree with me that this is a subject matter that we have full awareness of and knowledge of and should be ready to take action on?
I agree fully with Senator Kennedy that, in fact, it is past time. Senator DeWine, who is a Republican, obviously saw the wisdom of this legislation, and it is even more appropriate today. We face challenges unlike any other time in our history as it relates to what police and firefighters are called to do. They go far beyond their traditional roles, and they need to have a voice as it relates to how they respond to these new challenges and to their new roles. And finally, I would just simply say, even when they negotiate, I know New York City firefighters didn't say, well, we don't have enough men on the rig according to our contract, so we're not going to go respond on September 11th. Or enough police officers who say, we don't have two men cars patrolling, so we're not going to go respond. That has never been the case of those who serve. They have an ultimate calling. They live to that calling every day. And we need to live to our ultimate calling here in the Senate to respond to the challenges they face each and every day and to give them the right and the dignity that they deserve to be able to negotiate, not only for themselves and their families, but for the well-being of the citizens they serve. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.